Varda Elentári was the most powerful of the queens of the Valar and the creator of the stars themselves. Her origins stretch back before the creation of Arda, when she dwelt with Ilúvatar in the Timeless Halls alongside the other Ainur. During the great music that shaped reality, Varda's themes wove light itself into existence, establishing her dominion over all radiance in the universe. When she descended into Ea with the other Valar, she took physical form as a being of overwhelming beauty whose face radiated light too brilliant for any mortal or even most immortals to behold directly. In the earliest days before the awakening of the elves, Varda undertook her greatest work by kindling the stars from the dews of Telperion, creating countless points of light including Carnil, Luanil, Nennar, Lumbar, Alcarinco, and Elamire. She gathered the ancient light that Melkor had dispersed and formed new constellations specifically to herald the coming of the Firstborn, including Menelmacar with his shining belt, later called Orion, and Velasirka, the sickle of the Valar that stood as a sign of doom for Morgoth in the north. The elves called her Elbereth Gilthaniel, Star-Kindler, and loved her above all the Valar because she had prepared the skies for their awakening. Her power extended far beyond mere creation of celestial bodies, as she possessed the ability to hear any cry for aid spoken in Middle-earth, especially those uttered in darkness or despair. The light she placed in Arendil's Silmaril became the Evening Star, the most beloved star of the elves, and her name alone carried such power that servants of darkness could not endure its utterance. When Sam invoked her name in Cirith Ungol, the very mention of Elbereth caused the Watcher's will to break and their forms to crumble. Orcs fled in terror when elves sang hymns to Varda, and even Shelob retreated from the light of Arendil's star captured in Galadriel's phial. She resided on Tanaketil, the highest mountain in all Arda, alongside her spouse Manwë, and from their halls of Ilmarin she could perceive everything that occurred in the world below. Her throne beside Manwë allowed them to see further than any other beings in existence when their powers combined. The light that emanated from her face was said to be the light of Ilúvatar himself, making her not just powerful but a direct conduit of the Creator's own radiance into the world. Before the creation of the sun and moon, Varda's stars were the only light in Middle-earth, making her directly responsible for enabling the awakening of the elves at Cuiviénen. The hallowing she placed upon the Silmarils made them burn any evil flesh that touched them, demonstrating her ability to imbue objects with divine properties that endured forever. Her rejection of Melkor before the creation of Arda, when he sought her in marriage, marked the beginning of his special hatred for her above all other Valar. The lamps of the Valar, Ilwin and Ormel, which first lit the world, contained light that Varda had gathered and refined from the cosmic void. When creating stars, she didn't simply place lights in the sky, but wove them into patterns that told stories and prophecies, encoding messages that only the wise could fully interpret across ages. Manwë Súlimo was the elder king of Arda and the mightiest of all the Valar in authority, though not in raw strength. He was the brother of Melkor and Ilúvatar's thought, created to be his equal in power but opposite in nature, choosing harmony where Melkor chose discord. As the appointed vice-regent of Ilúvatar, Manwë held absolute authority over all of Arda, commanding not just the Valar but having dominion over every living thing that drew breath. His sphere of influence encompassed the wind and air, from the smallest breeze to the mightiest tempest, and through the winds he could perceive and influence events anywhere in Arda simultaneously. The great eagles, including Thorondor with his wingspan of 180 feet, served as his personal messengers and were created by him before the awakening of the children of Ilúvatar. During the War of Wrath, Manwë commanded the host of Valinor, the most powerful military force ever assembled, consisting of Maiar, Vanyar elves, and beings of such might that their march shattered Beleriand and reshaped the entire western coast of Middle-earth. His judgments were final and absolute, demonstrated when he cast Melkor into the void, a feat requiring not physical strength but authority over the very fabric of reality itself. Unlike other Valar who might act independently, Manwë maintained constant communion with Ilúvatar, making him the only being in Arda who could claim to know the Creator's will directly. When he sat upon his throne on Tanaquetil with Varda beside him, their combined sight could pierce through all shadows and veils, seeing into the hearts of all beings and across all the spheres of the world. He commanded the allegiance of all good spirits and could summon the powers of all the Valar united, when necessity demanded, as he did when pronouncing the doom of Mandos or preparing for the final assault on Angband. His breath itself was the source of all life-giving airs in Arda, and his voice speaking in wrath could crack mountains and split the foundations of the earth. Even Melkor, at the height of his power, feared direct confrontation with Manwë when the Elder King's full authority was roused. Yet despite this overwhelming might, Manwë deliberately chose to rule through wisdom and mercy rather than force, intervening directly only when the balance of the world itself was threatened. The sapphire scepter of Manwë was said to be carved from a fragment of Ilúvatar's throne itself, granting him the authority to speak binding judgments that reality itself would enforce. His understanding of the music of the Ainur was more complete than any save, perhaps Ilúvatar, allowing him to perceive how current events connected to the grand themes that shaped existence. When he released Melkor from his 3 ages of imprisonment, it wasn't naivety, but rather adherence to a divine plan he perceived but could not fully alter. The eagles he created weren't merely servants but extensions of his will, their eyes serving as his throughout Middle-earth, which is why Gwaihir could arrive precisely when needed during crucial moments. During the drowning of Númenor, Manwë's sorrow was so great that storms raged across all of Arda for 7 days, demonstrating how his emotions could affect the physical world. Ulmo, Lord of Waters, was unique among the Valar as he dwelt alone and seldom came to the councils in Valinor, preferring the depths of the seas to the halls of Manwë. His power flowed through every drop of water in Arda, from the smallest mountain spring to the vast deeps of Belagir, making him omnipresent in a way that even other Valar were not. Before the creation of Arda, Ulmo's themes in the great music were the most profound and beautiful, weaving together the sounds of all waters that would ever be, and even Melkor's discord could not wholly mar their beauty, but instead increase their sorrow and depth. He moved through Middle-earth constantly via its rivers and streams, maintaining awareness of all events through the waters that touched every land, which is why he knew of the sufferings of elves and men when other Valar remained unaware in their bliss in Valinor. His horn, the Ulamuri, created from white shells by the Maiar Salmar, produced music that once heard could never be forgotten, instilling an unquenchable longing for the sea in any who heard it. During the flight of the Noldor, Ulmo directly intervened more than any other Valar, appearing to Turgon and Finrod in dreams to guide them to establish Gondolin and Nargothrond, the hidden realms that would shelter the free peoples for centuries. He raised Tuor as his specific instrument, appearing to him directly at Viniamar in a form so terrible and magnificent that Tuor fell to his face, making Ulmo one of the only Valar to manifest in full glory to a mortal man. The Lord of Waters possessed the power to alter coastlines, as he did when helping to hide Gondolin by shrouding the veil in mists and shadows that confounded even the spies of Morgoth. His protection over Elwing when she cast herself into the sea demonstrated his ability to transform mortals, changing her into a seabird to carry the Silmaril to Ezerindil. Unlike Manwë, who acted through authority and law, Ulmo operated through inspiration and dreams, planting visions in the minds of the children of Ilúvatar that would manifest years or decades later. The music of water itself carried his messages, which is why the fountains of Gondolin and streams of Doriath could convey warnings and wisdom to those who knew how to listen. Even in the depths of Autumno and later Angband, water that seeped through rock and stone carried Ulmo's power, allowing him alone among the Valar to contest Melkor's dominion in his own fortresses. Ungoliant was a primordial entity of darkness, whose origins remained unknown even to the Valar, though she took the form of a monstrous spider of ever-changing size. Some claimed she arose from the darkness itself that lay about Arda, others that she was a corrupted Maya who had entered the void and become something far worse, but none knew the truth. Her power was unique in all of Arda, as she could devour light itself, creating a darkness that was not merely the absence of light, but an active, hungry void that consumed elimination. When she drank the light of the 2 trees of Valinor with Melkor, she grew to such hideous size and power that even Morgoth, the mightiest of all created beings, feared her and could not command her. The unlight she wove from her body was described as darkness visible, creating webs that could trap not just physical beings but light and hope themselves, forming barriers that even the Valar struggled to penetrate. After draining the 2 trees, she demanded the Silmarils from Morgoth, and when he refused, she bound him in her webs, and the Dark Lord who had defied all the Valar united was helpless before her hunger. Only the arrival of the Balrogs, summoned by Morgoth's desperate cry that echoed across all Beleriand, saved him from being devoured entirely. She bred with the great spiders of the Mountains of Terror and produced offspring that would plague Middle-earth for ages, passing on her ability to weave darkness and corrupt light to lesser degrees. Her hunger was infinite and could never be satisfied, driving her to eventually devour herself in the wastes of the south, though some claimed she endured in the forgotten places of the world where light had never touched. The terror she inspired was so profound that even millennia later, her last known spawn, Shelob, was called the last child of Ungoliant, to trouble the unhappy world, suggesting her evil transcended normal physical destruction. During her assault on the 2 trees, she moved faster than thought despite her enormous bulk, and her webs were strong enough to hold beings of Maya-level power indefinitely. The Valar themselves avoided direct confrontation with her after she fled Valinor, suggesting that even they were uncertain of victory against a creature that existed outside the normal order of creation. The poison she injected into the two trees wasn't merely destructive but corrupting, tainting the very essence of light so that not even Yavanna could heal them completely. Her ability to multiply herself through spawning created a network of lesser darknesses across Middle-earth, each spider carrying a fragment of her primordial hunger. The Girdle of Melian, one of the strongest protective enchantments ever woven, was specifically reinforced against the spider creatures of the Mountains of Terror, showing how deeply the Maiar feared Ungoliant's offspring. When she consumed gems and crystals, she didn't just destroy them, but unmade their light retroactively, erasing the memory of their brilliance from the world. Her webs could entangle not just physical beings, but concepts themselves, which is why those caught in her snares often forgot hope, love, and even their own names. The true horror of Ungoliant lay not in her physical form, but in what she represented, being a manifestation of the primordial void that existed before creation, the absence that preceded existence itself. Her ability to grow from consumption was limitless, and had she devoured the Silmarils, some believe she would have grown large enough to swallow Arda entirely, becoming a black hole of spiritual emptiness. The darkness she created was described as having weight and substance, pressing down on those within it like deep ocean water, making breathing difficult and movement sluggish. Her offspring inherited diluted versions of her powers, with each generation growing weaker, yet even the smallest spiders of Mirkwood carried enough of her essence to inspire instinctive terror in all living things. The regions where she passed during her flight from Valinor remained corrupted for ages, with the land itself remembering her presence and rejecting any attempt at healing or cultivation. Her hunger wasn't merely physical, but existential, seeking to devour not just matter but meaning itself, which is why Morgoth feared her despite his own immense power. The void she left in the world after consuming the light of the two trees could never be completely filled, creating a permanent scar in the fabric of reality that made the recreation of their light impossible. During her confrontation with Morgoth over the Silmarils, the Balrog's whips of flame barely drove her back, and some accounts suggest she allowed herself to be driven off rather than being truly defeated. The sound of her feeding was described as the opposite of music, an anti-harmony that undid the themes of creation wherever it was heard. Her ability to spawn without a mate suggested she could reproduce through division, each offspring being a smaller fragment of her original essence, explaining why her children, while terrible, never matched her power. Shelob was the last great spawn of Ungoliant to plague Middle-earth, dwelling in the tunnels of Cirith Ungol for thousands of years before the War of the Ring. She inherited her mother's ability to weave darkness into physical form, creating tunnels of shadow that light could barely penetrate, though she lacked Ungoliant's power to devour light entirely. Her body had grown vast over the millennia, with a bloated bag of a belly and legs with knobbed joints that rose high above her back, each leg ending in a claw that could pierce steel. Unlike common spiders that fed on blood, Shelob feasted on the flesh and life force of her victims, preferring the blood of elves and men but consuming orcs when nothing else was available. She had made a pact with Sauron himself, or rather existed in an understanding where he provided her with prey through his fortress of Cirith Ungol, and she guarded the secret stair, though she served no one and acknowledged no master. Her intelligence far exceeded that of a mere beast, as she could remember events from thousands of years past and held grudges against entire bloodlines, particularly the line of Elendil. The darkness she exuded was not merely physical but spiritual, inducing despair and madness in those who entered her tunnels, causing even hardened warriors to lose their way and surrender to fear. Her hide was harder than horn or scale, impervious to normal weapons, and even Sting, a blade of Gondolin make, could barely pierce her skin when wielded with desperate strength. She possessed multiple eyes that could see in absolute darkness, but they were also her weakness, being the only truly vulnerable part of her body. When she battled Sam Gamgee, she had never known defeat in thousands of years of existence, having devoured countless warriors, including orcs, men, and elves who attempted to pass through her domain. Her venom could paralyze victims while keeping them alive for days or weeks, preserving them fresh for her feeding. The mere rumor of her presence was enough to deter entire armies from attempting to use the pass of Cirith Ungol, making her more effective than 1,000 orc guards. Her offspring spread throughout the dark places of Middle-earth, though none achieved her size or power, being mere shadows of Ungoliant's original darkness.